She sat near the window of a small neighborhood cafe in Ohio, her wheelchair angled slightly toward the glass. Outside, the afternoon sun painted warm lines across the sidewalk, but none of that warmth reached her table. In front of her sat a single cupcake on a chipped white plate, vanilla with pale pink frosting. It had cost exactly $3, the total of her savings for the week. Today was her birthday. No balloons. No cards. No phone buzzing with messages. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator behind the counter and the soft clink of cups. Her name was Eleanor Price, and she had turned 57 that day. Years earlier, a car accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down and slowly pushed her out of the life she once knew. Friends drifted away when hospital visits turned into long-term care. Family ties, already thin, snapped completely after her parents passed. Now she lived alone in a small apartment, surviving on disability checks and careful budgeting. Birthdays used to mean dinners and laughter. Now they meant counting coins and choosing the smallest possible joy. Eleanor stared at the candle she hadn't lit. The cafe charged extra for candles, and she couldn't justify it. She told herself the cupcake was enough, that she didn't need the ritual. Still, her throat tightened as she imagined blowing out a candle in her childhood kitchen, her mother clapping softly. She pushed the memory away and lifted the fork with effort. Her hands weren't as steady as they once were. Around her, people chatted, laughed, came and went, entire worlds passing by without noticing hers. At the table behind her sat a man in his early 30s and a little girl with curly hair tied in uneven pigtails. The man's name was Daniel Brooks, a single father who worked construction when jobs were available. His daughter, Lily, was 6 and endlessly curious. They had come in for grilled cheese sandwiches, a small treat after Lily's school recital. Daniel was tired, distracted, scrolling through his phone, but Lily wasn't. She noticed Eleanor immediately, the wheelchair, the untouched cupcake, the way she sat so still. "Daddy," Lily whispered, tugging on his sleeve. "Why is that lady all alone?" Daniel glanced over briefly. "Some people like quiet, sweetheart," he said, though something about the scene stuck with him. Lily frowned, studying Eleanor like a puzzle she couldn't solve. She noticed the single cupcake, the lack of a candle, the way Eleanor's eyes lingered on the door every time it opened. Lily slid off her chair and walked closer before Daniel could stop her, her sneakers squeaking softly against the floor. "Excuse me," Lily said, her voice gentle but confident. Eleanor looked up, startled. "Is that your birthday cupcake?" Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, it is." Lily smiled wide. "Happy birthday," she said, as if this were the most important news in the world. The words hit Eleanor harder than she expected. Her eyes burned, and she had to look away for a moment. Daniel hurried over, apologizing under his breath, but Eleanor shook her head. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." Lily tilted her head. "Where's your candle?" Eleanor gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "I didn't get one." Lily didn't ask why. She simply ran back to her table, grabbed the unused candle from their own dessert plate, and returned. Daniel followed, unsure but curious. Lily carefully stuck the candle into the frosting, her tongue poking out in concentration. "You have to make a wish," she instructed. Daniel felt something shift inside him. He noticed Eleanor's worn jacket, the careful way she positioned her hands, the loneliness that suddenly felt loud. He asked the barista if he could light the candle. The barista nodded, smiling knowingly. When the flame flickered to life, the small table seemed brighter, warmer. Eleanor closed her eyes. Her wish wasn't grand. She didn't wish to walk again or to be rich. She wished, simply, not to feel invisible anymore. She leaned forward and blew out the candle. Lily clapped softly, and Daniel smiled in a way he hadn't in a long time. "Would you like to sit with us?" Daniel asked, surprising himself. "If you don't mind." Eleanor hesitated. Years of disappointment had taught her caution. But Lily was already pulling up an extra chair, and something in Daniel's eyes felt sincere. "I'd like that," Eleanor said. They talked slowly at first. Eleanor told them about her old job as a librarian, how she loved recommending books to children. Lily lit up at that, immediately asking for story suggestions. Daniel shared bits of his life, how Lily's mom had passed away 3 years earlier, how it had just been the two of them since. The conversation wasn't dramatic or emotional. It was simple, human, and real. And for Eleanor, it felt like oxygen. When it was time to leave, Daniel paid for Eleanor's cupcake without making a show of it. He slipped the receipt into his pocket, not wanting to embarrass her. Lily hugged Eleanor carefully, wrapping her arms around her shoulders. "I'm glad you're not alone anymore," she said. Eleanor watched them go, her heart full in a way it hadn't been for years. She didn't know if she'd ever see them again. She didn't need promises. That small moment had already changed something deep inside her. But that wasn't the end. The next week, Daniel returned to the cafe with Lily, scanning the room. When they saw Eleanor at her usual spot, Lily squealed and ran over. They started meeting there every Thursday. Sometimes they brought books, sometimes coffee, sometimes just conversation. Daniel helped Eleanor with small repairs at her apartment. Eleanor helped Lily with reading. Slowly, quietly, a family began to form, not by blood, but by choice. Months later, on Eleanor's next birthday, there was a cake with candles. There were cards. There was laughter filling a small apartment that once echoed with silence. Eleanor still had challenges. She was still paralyzed. Life was still hard. But she was no longer invisible. All because a little girl noticed what most people ignored, and a single dad chose kindness over convenience.